there's no question that Bitcoin is superior to gold in every respect. And I believe Bitcoin is digital gold, and we live in a digital world. I think Bitcoin will replace gold fully. The tradable gold is more like, 4 to 5 trillion. So, but I think as money shifts out of other assets, I mean, both Bitcoin and gold can win, and I think both of them are going to go up in price, just Bitcoin a lot faster. I could easily see us in this cycle go to 300 or 400 and then correct back to 250 or something. I mean, it's, that I think the volatility will be there for a while. That's not going to go away. It's going to be less. I mean, I think the biggest drawdown was like 90% in the beginning. We're never going to see one of those again. You're not going to get to buy Bitcoin 90% lower than it is today. You might get to buy it 50% lower than it is at the peak that we're heading towards. That seems possible.
Gold has long been seen as the ultimate store of value, a timeless asset trusted for centuries. But let's face it, gold is fading into irrelevance, and Bitcoin is here to claim its crown. In an increasingly digital world, Bitcoin isn't just an alternative, it's the future, poised to outpace and surpass gold in every possible way. As the global financial landscape evolves, investors are seeking assets that offer more than just safety. They want efficiency, security, and scalability. Bitcoin ticks all those boxes, while gold, constrained by its physical limitations and outdated systems, fails to even come close. The era of digital assets is here, and Bitcoin is leading the charge. Lawrence Lepard doesn't hold back when he asserts that Bitcoin is superior to gold in every respect and will ultimately replace it in the digital age. With the gold market valued between $4 trillion to $5 trillion, many are betting on both Bitcoin and gold appreciating as traditional assets falter. However, Lepard predicts Bitcoin's growth will be far faster and more explosive, with a surge to $300,000 or even $400,000 this cycle, followed by a slight dip to $250,000, far from the 90% crashes Bitcoin saw in its early days. Those days are over. Bitcoin is no longer a fringe asset. It's becoming institutionalized, with mainstream adoption soaring. ETFs are shattering records, companies are piling in, and nations are starting to realize that Bitcoin is the future of money. The digital gold rush is underway, and gold is being left behind. Bitcoin's rise to $1 million is not a question of if, it's a question of when. If you're still holding on to gold, you're about to be blindsided. The digital revolution is already in full swing, and Bitcoin is leading the way. Get on the right side of history. Before we continue with the rest of the video, do check out Daily 5-Minute Crypto Newsletter with all the latest crypto and Bitcoin news. It's a fantastic analysis of on-chain crypto data and breakdowns, and the best part is it's absolutely free. They'll cover expert predictions, breakdowns of on-chain crypto data, and any breaking news you need to know, all in a nutshell. Click the first link in the description and enter your email to join over 50,000 others in becoming a better crypto investor right now.
History shows that when monetary systems break, the way you get the economy or the society back on track is you return to sound money. And so the problem is, I mean, our money is very unsound and getting more unsound as we go day by day. I mean, so we were in a really unsound money system. It's getting worse. So it's pretty simple. I mean, when something's broken, that's what you got to fix. You've got to have sound money. Pre-Bitcoin, that choice to do that would have been to go back to a gold standard. And who knows, there might be a time when the authorities try that because it's more tried and true. And, some people are afraid of Bitcoin, although I'm encouraged by what I see Trump and, a lot of Americans thinking that maybe we can just skip the whole gold step and go straight to Bitcoin. But, the two forms of sound money that exist in the world are gold and Bitcoin. I call gold analog sound money. Bitcoin is digital sound money. And, we need to go back to that. Once we get back to a sound money standard, things will be pretty good. In fact, very quickly, I think. But, the transition from here to there is going to be bumpy, and, it's not at all clear how it's going to unfold. But I'm pretty sure, pretty high probability that given how broken the old thing is, human beings, generally speaking, trend in the right direction towards improvement. So I think we'll ultimately fix this thing and be back on a sound money standard. But it's, it takes time. It's not just tomorrow.
Where do you think banks are going to be in all these new reorganized?
Very interesting question. Yeah, I mean, I think, first of all, I think they'll probably end up embracing Bitcoin or they'll get left behind. Second of all, fractional reserve lending, I talk about that a lot in the book and how that creates money and how that's what really the core source of the problem, that these guys get way out over their skis and and they go bankrupt, and then they get bailed out, and then we print money to bail them out, and that's what fuels the inflation. I mean, it's a vicious cycle. I think the banks will be restrained. I think that if we really do return to a sound money standard, banks won't be able to lever themselves up. And in fact, in the book, I call for, abolishing the Federal Reserve and abolishing FDIC, and basically having no backstop on the banks, so that a bank would have to behave in a responsible manner. And if they didn't, they'd go bankrupt. And if they went bankrupt, all the depositors in that bank would lose. And so there'd be a real incentive, for them to behave well, as opposed to the incentives that we now have, which create a lot of what we call moral hazard, where they just say, hey, who cares? I can be, like they did in '08, I can be extremely aggressive, make as much money as possible. When the whole thing blows up, they'll just bail me out. I mean, therein lies the problem, right? That bailout costs everyone else money, because they print that money to bail them out. They get saved, and we all pay more for gasoline and food. It's just that simple. There's no question that Bitcoin is superior to gold in every respect. And I believe Bitcoin is digital gold, and we live in a digital world. I think Bitcoin will replace gold fully. However, not tomorrow. 8 billion people know that, gold is sound money. A few hundred million, maybe, if at a large number, I'd say probably even less than that, really understand that Bitcoin is sound money. And so, it's done a pretty nice job. It's $2 trillion of market cap. Gold is closer to 18, as you say, although not all of the gold's tradable. I mean, you kind of consider the central bank gold, the antiquities gold, the gold that's on women's necks in the form of jewelry. Of course, that could be tradable. You could melt down your gold necklace, but the tradable gold is more like 4 to 5 trillion. But I think as money shifts out of other assets, I mean, both Bitcoin and gold can win, and I think both of them are going to go up in price. Just Bitcoin a lot faster, and because Bitcoin's got they both benefit from monetary debasement, but Bitcoin's got an adoption curve going on too. And so, Jesse Meyer on Twitter has a great chart that shows $900 trillion of financial assets, with real estate being half of that, and the balance being stocks and bonds and gold and cash. And, we're at 2 trillion. So it's 0.2% of 1% is currently Bitcoin. So we got a long way to go. I mean, Bitcoin could do a 10 bagger from here, which would imply that we'd be at $1 million a coin, and we'd still only be 2% of total global assets. So this is the soundest form of money ever invented. So I think Bitcoin is going to do a 10 bagger, and I think it's going to do a 10 bagger again. But, on what time frame, I don't really know. I mean, I use this kind of a lower end base case, the power law model, because it's got a lot of correlation looking backwards. And I think that shows you at $1 million in 5-6 years. But I think you probably get there faster than that. We're at that stage now, kind of the tipping point. I mean, the ETFs were a huge thing, right? And now we've got a president and administration that's crypto friendly and Bitcoin friendly. Things I heard when I was at MENA, you were there too, are that the strategic reserve is something they're going to do. We now know, I also heard at MENA that other nation states, including, the UAE, Oman, and the Saudis are all stacking Bitcoin. It's a coming thing, and it might surprise us. We just don't know. We just really don't know. But in my mind, it's going to be digital gold and then some. And I think both gold and Bitcoin are going to go up a lot in nominal, fiat money terms, because we printed a lot of fiat money, and they're going to have to print more.
The global monetary system is failing, and history shows that only a return to sound money can restore stability. Lawrence Lepard argues that Bitcoin and gold are the only true solutions, with gold as analog sound money and Bitcoin as digital sound money. While both will rise, Bitcoin's adoption curve gives it explosive potential. With a $2 trillion market cap, Lepard predicts Bitcoin could hit $1 million as institutions and nations accumulate it. The shift to digital sound money is inevitable, and Bitcoin is at the forefront of this revolution. Bitcoin is entering a golden age, with institutional adoption accelerating under a crypto-friendly administration. Lepard forecasts rapid growth, pushing Bitcoin past $100,000, potentially surging to $200,000 and beyond, though with volatility but no extreme crashes. ETFs are breaking records, solidifying Bitcoin as a core asset. He emphasizes the importance of saving and appreciating assets like Bitcoin, harnessing the power of compounding for long-term wealth. As inflation erodes fiat currencies, Bitcoin's fixed supply makes it the ultimate hedge. Those who ignore it risk being left behind. Let's watch more clips from the interview.
On balance, this is a crypto-friendly administration, though, and that's a huge positive. I mean, Operation Choke Point, will get shut down. Banks will be able to do it. SAB 121, will not get through, and so the banks will not be able to custody and deal in Bitcoin. I mean, this is a big deal. You'll be able to borrow against your Bitcoin. I mean, there are a lot of good things coming that I think are going to be enormously positive. I mean, and that's kind of how it feels to me. Like we're right at that cusp of really, putting up some numbers that people are like, oh my God, look at this. I mean, we're not going to stop at 100. We're going to go to 200 and then 300. And, and people are going to be like, whoa, and some will continue to say it's a bubble, but it's not. It's the real deal. Having said that, there'll be volatility. I mean, you mentioned, because of the way the cycles work, because of the halving, because just people tend to get out too far over their skis, and then of course FUD sets in and some people sell. I could easily see us in this cycle go to 300 or 400 and then correct back to 250 or something. I mean, it's that I think the volatility will be there for a while. That's not going to go away. It's going to be less. I mean, I think the biggest drawdown was like 90% in the beginning. We're never going to see one of those again. You're not going to get to buy Bitcoin 90% lower than it is today. You might get to buy it 50% lower than it is at the peak that we're heading towards. That seems possible. And the gold ETF did very well, by the way, when it was launched in the early 2000s. It did extremely well, grew very rapidly, and it helped fuel the gold price from $250 to $1,900 an ounce. It was a big deal. But this is done, it's blown it away. I mean, much more quickly. I mean, there are a lot of things you'd love to have in an in-kind ETF. You'd love to have, no capital gains tax on Bitcoin. I mean, Trump kind of floated that in one of his conversations. I don't know. I think those might be dreams that are a little bit too far. I mean, I think they're very doable. Consider that, basically Nixon and Roosevelt, they didn't go through Congress to do what they did monetarily. I mean, Roosevelt grabbed gold and then revalued. Nixon broke the chain to gold at 71 and devalued, and they just did it on their own. So I think that Trump will probably do an EO where he says we're buying Bitcoin. Now, the question is how much and from what source, and the exchange stabilization fund's not huge, and it's used for other things, but they could use it to do this. I mean, I love the Loomis bill that says they're going to buy 1 million coins over a period of time. I've heard mixed debates on that. I've heard some people say, oh yeah, it's no problem. She's got the votes, they'll get it through. I've heard others say there's no way. So I don't know. I mean, that'd be really great, but I'm not counting on that. But you don't really need any of that. I mean, because we're going in the right direction. And I think the surprises, my sense is the surprises will be positive surprises because we are going in the right direction. And I compare it to gold this year. I just did my quarterly year-end report, and Bitcoin was up 121% last year. I mean, gold had a good year. Gold was up like 27, 28%. It's a very good year. But Bitcoin was up 121%. I mean, it's just, and I don't see what's going to stop it. I just don't. I see more adoption. I see more, more use cases developing all the time. So, betting against it to me just seems crazy. And to not have some, I try to tell all my clients, you don't have to go crazy on this thing. I mean, it's got a lot of upside. You can only lose 1x what you put in it. I think you can make 10x or 100x if you wait long enough. I would just sell 1% a year and use that as my living expenses. And, I don't know, what have we got, 30 years left? I mean, the balance that I didn't sell would go up in value. So every year I'd have to sell a smaller percent, right? Unless my living costs went up a lot. So, it provides you with a sense of comfort that you're never going to run out of money. That's how everybody who's ever gotten rich has gotten rich, is by having savings and allowing you just save 10% of your income. I mean, there are all these stories of people who lived very modest lives, never really made big money, but managed to save 10% of their money or sometimes more, and put it into things that went up in value, not down in value. And by the time they were in their 50s or 60s or 70s, it was kind of stunning how rich they were. So, it does work, but it requires a certain amount of discipline, and it requires putting, the key piece is it requires never losing the money, putting it into things that hold their value or go up in value.
As Bitcoin stabilizes above $100,000 following Trump's pro-crypto policies, the market faces some uncertainty. The initial excitement surrounding regulatory clarity and a favorable administration has cooled, leaving traders questioning what comes next. While some worry about a correction, historical cycles suggest Bitcoin is entering a new phase of institutional dominance. With ETFs breaking records and major corporations increasing their holdings, Bitcoin's position as a legitimate asset class is stronger than ever. But how high can it go, and what challenges lie ahead? Lawrence Lepard believes Bitcoin's rise is inevitable, predicting a move towards $200,000, $300,000, and beyond. He argues that Bitcoin's adoption curve is just beginning, with nation-states quietly accumulating and financial institutions preparing for broader integration. The approval of Bitcoin ETFs has exceeded expectations, outpacing gold's early ETF growth and paving the way for mainstream investment. While short-term volatility remains, Lepard is confident that Bitcoin's long-term trajectory points to higher prices, greater adoption, and reduced downside risk. He asserts that 90% crashes are unlikely, though 50% corrections may still occur as sentiment shift. With major players like MicroStrategy continuing to accumulate Bitcoin, investors are weighing their options. Lepard stresses that wealth is built by saving in assets that appreciate over time, and Bitcoin, with its fixed supply and increasing institutional backing, presents an unprecedented opportunity. With Trump's administration pushing for strategic Bitcoin reserves and global financial shifts underway, the next decade may solidify Bitcoin as the world's dominant store of value. As we wrap up, could Bitcoin surpass gold's $18 trillion market cap in the next decade? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. For more Daily Dose Crypto news, check out these 2 awesome videos on your screen. Click now and we will see you on the next video.